Now, do you remember the new memorial to Bomber Command, which was opened by the Queen back in June? Quite a big ceremony and everything. The whole thing cost about £7 million for constructing the memorial and for the opening ceremony. And the charity responsible for raising a large amount of money towards it says that they are short of the final £500,000 to cover these costs. They want the government to step in to pay the £500,000, but the problem is the government doesn't want to. And so 3 very elderly war veterans may well have to pay the cost between themselves along with a handful of others. A lot of money, £500,000 short. The government say they have paid enough already. We've had a statement from the Ministry of Defence and it's being read here by a colleague.
The government does not usually support opening ceremonies for public memorials. However, given the unique circumstances of the Bomber Command Memorial, an exception was made in this case, with the government spending over £1.5 million on the event to commemorate the 55,573 aircrew who paid the ultimate sacrifice during the Second World War. This included a £200,000 contribution towards the opening ceremony to help cover the additional costs of seating and security. £1 million towards the VAT costs of the construction of the memorial, and a contribution of RAF personnel, aircraft and catering that totalled around £375,000.
OK, so that was the government, and I'm joined now just to go through these numbers by the Daily Mail writer and royal author Robert Hardman, who can help us understand this bill and how it breaks down. Good afternoon to you, Robert.
Good afternoon, Jeremy.
So total cost around £7 million, is that right?
Well, yes, to build the memorial, they raised all the money themselves. That's not an issue. That was entirely voluntary donations, philanthropists and well-wishers, and that was about £6.5 million. And there was no money from the taxpayer, no money from the lottery. They did it themselves. That's not an issue. What's an issue?
Rob, I was just going to say, Robin Gibb was involved in that, wasn't
Robin
he?
Gibb of the Bee Gees was very much a driving force behind this, along with several veterans. Another pop star, Jim Dooley, was also involved. It was across the ages. It was a case of let's just fill in this gap in our national memory. The memorials to every other aspect of the Second World War, but Bomber Command, they had the worst casualty rates. 1 in 2 died. Let's not get away from that. Over 50,000 men gave their lives to Bomber Command, and yet at the end of the war they were sort of airbrushed out. They were deemed slightly embarrassing. 67 years later, finally we get round to a memorial to these gallant men. It's about time too, is the general view, I think, of most people. So this memorial had a fair wind. People chipped in and they built the thing. Then it came to the opening ceremony, and that gradually escalated from being a respectable affair into a very substantial state occasion. Not just the Queen, 13 members of the royal family there, all the top brass from the RAF, but most importantly, thousands of veterans and their families, particularly widows and the children of the men who never came home. They all wanted to be there, and suddenly this event grew and grew and grew, and you had this very noble band of amateurs trying to put this thing together, and this event was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The government promised them a certain amount of money. It's become a bit fuzzy as to who promised what to whom, but the fact is these veterans are now short by about £500,000, and if something doesn't come up soon, then they are liable as trustees, and we could have the extraordinary situation of gallant veterans actually being forced to sell their homes to pay this.
It's an amazing story, and I understand that part of the argument, for example, from the government is the trustees say to the Ministry of Defence, well, you promised us £250,000, and the Ministry of Defence said, well, we put on a fly past, and that's what that cost. Is that right?
Yes, it's preposterous for the government really to turn around and say, oh, look, we've given you a Lancaster bomber fly past. It's a Bomber Command Memorial. I mean, what does the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight exist for, which is where this Lancaster is based? What does it exist for if not to honour the men who flew these planes? The government says, oh, we've given you £1 million in VAT. It wasn't a gift. The fact was this thing would have been VAT exempt had it not been for various boring planning issues I won't go into, being delaying and holding the whole thing up for a year. And there was then a change in Treasury policy, which meant suddenly this memorial went from being zero rated, i.e. not having to pay VAT, to suddenly having to pay VAT. A minister actually went into bat, and no longer a minister, John Penrose, who was at the Department of Culture, very nobly secured an exemption for this memorial. So it's a very complicated issue. There are lots of goodies and villains, and it's by no means a case of evil government and poor veterans.
Sure.
There's all sorts of confusion region. But the bottom line is this was a state occasion, and when we have a state occasion, I think the state should pay for it and not depend on veterans and charities.
Thank you very much, Robert Hardman, Daily Mail writer and royal author. And we're going to speak now to Bomber Command veteran Harry Irons, Lancaster bomber tail gunner. He flew 60 sorties during the war, and he's also one of the trustees of the Memorial Fund, and so he will be liable for these extra costs if they come through. So, Harry, welcome to you. And on the line from Chelmsford, we've got Jonathan Davis, who's Managing Director of Jonathan Davis Wealth Management, to take another angle on this. Harry, first of all, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, yes.
This is a very difficult situation, because if you're looking at the fly past and then somebody says, oh, you're paying for that, it's frightening.
Well, it is really, because there's many fly past, and the government never asks for any money on these occasions. And what is bitter is that we've had to wait such a long while before we got our memorial. In Holland, they've got the most beautiful Bomber Command memorials you can see, and the Dutch government's paid for them all. And when we visit them, we've often asked ourselves, why is it Holland can have memorials for Bomber Command? Because I don't think you realise that Holland, during the war, of a night time, was one huge battlefield of bombers versus fighters.
Understood, but this is a situation where the government thinks there was no arrangement for it to pay. And Jonathan Davis, you've got some sympathy with that?
I do. I mean, who can possibly chide war heroes who fought for our liberty? That's not the issue, however. The issue is, did the trustees sign the contracts? Did the trustees not get a confirmation from the minister that the minister would fund the event, and so on? The law is very simple. Trustees are liable for the contracts that they enter into on behalf of the charity. Now, I don't actually think that they will have to pay for all this, because there will be other fundraising events. They'll make the money. But your listeners need to get to grips with the reality that if they agree to be the trustee of a charity, potentially they are personally liable.
Harry, how much do you think you're liable for?
I don't think we're liable at all, because what actually happened, we managed, I tell you, for 5 years we've been collecting, and once we got the £6.5 million, who should come along was the MOD. They said, we're taking over and we're going to distribute the tickets, which was absolutely chaotic. But half the people who should have got tickets never got them. If we'd have been in charge, we know who the veterans are, we've got their addresses, and we could have done a much better job.
Sure, but then having taken it over, I mean, Jonathan, this is where the defence comes in, isn't it? That once the MOD tip them the wink and say, look, we're going to take this one over, it's a big state occasion, at that point, morally, the responsibility passes on to the government, doesn't it?
Well, there's two issues there. I would, of course, agree with you, but have they got it in writing? We've all seen the programmes which show us the reality about government. What they say to your face and what they put down in writing could be two very different things. The thing is, we don't know what was said. We don't know what was said to whom and when. I would actually also like to see the minutes of the meetings of the trustees. Did they know that potentially there could be a shortfall? Because if they did, where's the moral responsibility here? And the final point I want to make is, can people stop saying the government pay? The government has no money. It has taxes and it has borrowings. It has no money. There is not a bottomless pit to bail out people who make mistakes. That may sound very harsh, but, you know, we're giving the bankers £100 billion a year who have made mistakes. There is not a bottomless pit. We need to stop. And then there's the civil servants who, with the rail franchise nonsense, there is not a bottomless pit.
Jonathan, it's Robert Hardman from the Mail here. I mean, I hear what you say, but we are not talking about here some multinational, some clever lobbying group going in to nick a few quid credit off the government here. These are well-intentioned people doing something utterly unique. This is a memorial. It's a one-off. It's not going to happen again. They don't go around building memorials as a matter of course. This was a one-off. They should have had a lot more help from government in the first place. I can see that clearly some mistakes have been made along the way here, but it goes back to the central point. This event grew from being a charity event into being a state occasion. It's attended by the head of state, the diplomatic corps, thousands of veterans, governors general from around the world. It's a state occasion, and when those things happen, it's down to the state. And in this case, the bill has been left. One or two government departments have behaved honourably, some have not, and as things stand, there's a right old mess. As of today, a benefactor has come in and said if the government opens its chequebook, he'll open his. I think there is a way forward
Okay,
here.
thank you. Robert Hardman, Daily Mail, Harry Irons, Bomber Command veteran and trustee, and Jonathan Davis, Managing Director of Jonathan Davis Wealth Management, who says you can't expect the government to bail you out even with this. Which do you think is the right side of the argument here? Because there's £500,000 at stake.
I've been driving all night, my hands wet on the wheel. There's a voice in my head that drives my heel. It's my baby calling, says I need you here. And it's 4:30 and I'm shifting gear. When she's lonely and the longing gets too much, she says the cable coming in from above. Don't need to phone it on. We've got a thing that I suppose made our love. We've got a wave in the air. Radar love. The radio springs some forgotten song. Brand new lead coming on strong. The road has got me hypnotized, and I'm spinning into a new sunrise. When I get lonely and I'm sure I've had enough, she sends a comfort coming in from above. We don't need no letter at all. We've got a thing that's cold with our love. We've got a light in the sky. No more speed, I'm almost there. Gotta keep cool now, gotta take care. Last car to pass, here I go. And the line of cars drove down real slow. And the radio played that forgotten song. Brand new leads coming on strong. And the newsman sang his same song. Oh, one more radar lover gone.
It's Radar Love by Golden Earring, and we are talking about the Bomber Command Memorial and Ceremony. The memorial's basically sorted. That was about 6 million, just over, that they raised. And Robin Gibb involved in that, actually. One of those stories that you read it a second time because you think, Robin Gibb, Bomber Command? But he did. He got very much behind it, the late BG. But the ceremony was costly, and they had a fly past and everything else. And there's some kind of misunderstanding between the government and the charity. The charity thought the government was paying, and the government says, well, we've done our bit by waiving the VAT and also paying for the fly past. So the extra you, the charity, have to pay. And that's a £500,000 bill that is landing on the laps of a very, very small number of people who are trustees of the charity but are legally responsible, and who include the 90-something veterans of Bomber Command hit with this bill. Linda Pryor in Woolston, Warwickshire, you're absolutely on a level with this story because your father was in Bomber Command.
He was, yes. He was a bomber pilot based at Tempsford with the Special Operations.
And he was one of those who sadly didn't make it.
He didn't, no. He was killed on the 15th of March 1943 over Germany, and that was 6 weeks before I was born, so I never actually knew him.
Oh. Well, it seems incredible. I was going to say, thinking about Harry, who we spoke to, is the age your dad would be now.
That's right.
What do you think about this story?
Well, I think the government's being disingenuous, really. I think they are morally responsible for the cost of the ceremony. But having said that, I would never see the veterans having to pay the price for what they have rightly tried to put right. And I think people like myself and my mother, who is still alive, would contribute towards that. We would never see them have to pay that.
Okay, thank you, Linda, very much indeed. By the way, on the Radio 2 Facebook page, there's a picture of the Bomber Command Memorial you can have a look at if you need. Just reminding, I think it's in Green Park in London. David Wesley in Worthing says the banks should help out. They should put a charity box on the counter to raise money for the memorial ceremony. Anyone who could afford it would put in £1 or £2. We should all help to honour these heroes. And it would make the banks more popular too. So we're discussing is who's responsible, and as Jonathan Davis was saying, the financial consultant who came on, legally the charity has to pay here. That really doesn't seem to be two ways about it. The question is whether you could actually have that kind of bill landing on the doormat of people who have done this kind of service for their country. Joyce Harling in Poole says, I think it is dreadful that the British government are not funding the opening ceremony for this memorial. After all, they gave for Britain. Isn't it about time that we all started giving something back? Let us play Badly Drawn Boy, and let us have the very well-drawn Steve Wright in the afternoon, who's coming on with, among others, says here Gary Barlow, but I think he was on yesterday. We'll find out.
Possibilities are landing at my feet. There's nothing I can see but possibilities. All colours are changing in my eyes. Your hopes are all fading, that will never do. You're seeing the world through cynical eyes. I'm seeing the world through the eyes of somebody new. Oh, there's a hope and there's a dream still in my heart. cynical eyes. I'm seeing the world through the eyes of somebody new. Oh, there's a hope left, there's a dream still in my heart. Look past the answers, there's a chance that there's no rule book for this love.
This badly drawn boy, Peter Birch in Christchurch, is furious about this story. He says if Bomber Command had not done what they did, we could have lost the war, and then you'd have a memorial to the German war dead in Hyde Park. Of course, the government should pay for the memorial and the ceremony as well.